Welcome to the Oliver Fetter YouTube channel. Today I am doing a timing job on my 1995 Mitsubishi Delica L300. Now mine has just under about 200,000 kilometers on it, so I would consider this my big 200k service that I'm currently doing. Let's take a look. So I already got the radiator out for that. Just gotta drain the coolant, disconnect the lines, disconnect the top bolt, take the fan out, disconnect these transmission lines, and then you get to about here. Just took the top cover off, and I took my belts out, and I removed the AC tensioner already. So I haven't really done anything yet besides prep the job. So you just need to make room to do the job. And because you have to drain the coolant anyways, I'd recommend you just pull the radiator. It gives you a lot more room to work. So first thing I'm gonna do before just jumping into this job blindly is that right here is our top dead center mark, that one right there. And I'm gonna spin the crank using this bolt going clockwise until I line this up with the crank's timing mark, which I have yet to see. I think it's on the other side. And that way, if you're careful, everything is already in position, meaning that if I set it to top dead center first, then I take my belts and tensioners and everything off, I don't have to worry about finding top dead center on everything because it's already there. It's already there. Then all I have to do when I put the belt back on is make sure it's really there, as in it hasn't shifted just slightly. A lot easier than if you just rip the belt off at a random point in engine rotation and hope for the best. So the other important thing to know about top dead center is there's actually two top dead centers. There's a top dead center on your compression stroke on cylinder number 1, and that's what you want. But the crankshaft spins at twice the speed as the camshaft and the fuel pump on the timing belt. These are twice as large pulley-wise. So these can be in either position. So you actually do want KB at the top and R at the bottom, because right now this is compression stroke. Let me show you. So we're at top dead center. If we keep going, there we go. That's the exhaust valve opening. So we're exhausting that compression stroke. And then it comes back up, and now we're back at top dead center. So you got to be careful, because this could equally look like top dead center, but it's the wrong one. And there's our opening of the intake valve. It's closed. Well, now we're coming back to actual top dead center. Top dead center on cylinder number 1 on the compression stroke. And right there. Okay. Okay, and just setup continued. Lower cover is now off. I want to show you all the timing marks in the main timing belt because they're now in view. You don't actually have to take your valve cover off to find top dead center, because you can use this other trick. So, right here, timing mark, and right here, timing pointer. There you go, that's the camshaft timing mark. So if you have this mark lined up and top dead center down your crankshaft lined up, it'll all go together and you'll be at the right spot. Onward, you have this little pointer right here, and you have this little timing mark on your fuel pump, so that needs to line up. And then down here on your crankshaft, you have one more. So again, you could reset everything before you take the belt off. I find it's just easier to set it first. There's your pointer, and there's your mark right there. So you get all 3 of those lined up for your main timing belt, and then the balance belt behind it should have its own marks as well. So I just removed the tensioner. A little bit tricky. You got this spring that actually gives the belt the tension, so you got to kind of work this out of here. But one thing to notice, everything else has kept time just fine. There you go. But our fuel pump mark has jumped considerably, and that's always going to happen on these Bosch units. They have this spring tension in here, so when we go to put this back on, we're just going to have to twist this pulley a bit with a wrench while we're putting the belt over it. All right, on to balance belt timing marks. We got the first one, we Got that little notch right there and that arrow behind it. There you go, right there. Down here, crankshaft pulley. You gotta look at the back. The back. There's a tick mark back there. It's very dark, but it's there. And same pointer. There we are. And over here, you got that tick mark and that pointer. So, definitely replace your balance belt. Apparently these are known to fail because people will not replace them. And if you look at this one, it actually looks pretty cracked. And if you don't replace it and then it fails, it'll take out your timing belt. So some people's reaction to that is to take the balance belt out altogether and just suffer having a rough running engine. And personally, I'll be replacing it and having a smooth running engine. So here you go. I just cleaned a lot, but you can see the main seal is leaking. You can see this balance shaft seal is not far behind it. And I bet you that one could also be leaking. It looks pretty bad over here. So I'm replacing all of these oil seals back here. You can see this has a keyway on it, or it has a angled cut. Crankshaft has a keyway, and I bet you this one has an angled cut too. So if you replace them, don't sweat it. The pulleys only go on one way, and then there's the timing marks to get it back to where it should be. And in terms of getting them off, either loosen them, if the timing belt's still on, or you can put your old balance belt back on and hold it like a strap wrench while you get that nut loose, which works pretty good. These are my new seals. Got a crankshaft, balance shaft, pump shaft, and camshaft. And to do this with the seals already in there and on the car, you kind of want something that looks like this. This tooth here on the end, you jam that past the edge of the seal, and that lets you pull the old seal out without damaging a lot with a screwdriver or something like that. So you take them out with this, and then you put them in very carefully with hammer and light tapping, and ideally something round and the right size, but I bet you I don't necessarily have something round and the right size for all of these, so carefully. But here, check it out. That one's almost leaking. The main seal might not have been leaking, and this one's nuking. Honestly, that was probably the leak that I thought was the main seal. So, gonna replace all of those. Also going to be doing the water pump and the thermostat on this service. So it's basically doing water pump, thermostat, radiator, fan clutch, timing belt, seals is the full service I'm doing. Okay, so I got all the seals replaced, including the camshaft. Camshaft has this pin right there that keeps it, camshaft sprocket I should say, has this pin that keeps it in one place, so no worries. I just got to take this bolt off, replace the seal behind it. Bolt goes back on at 51 foot-pounds, and I put some blue Loctite on there for good measure. And then you do want to counter hold this with like a strap wrench or something so you're not just pressing 51 foot-pounds into the valves. Then you want to come over here, get ready to do the water pump. Kind of need to get this bracket, power steering bracket, out of the way. So there's a bolt that comes in from the back side, and there's a bolt that comes in through the face. You can get it through the hole in the pulley, and then that is out of your way, and you can take this bracket off so we can get to the water pump. So the water pump has a grand total of 6 bolts that hold it in. Right now it's loose, and this is why I'd recommend you either replace your seals entirely or wait to replace them till after you do the water pump, one or the other, because coolant goes everywhere and you don't want that coolant to go in your oil. This is now loose. There's just this pipe back here that fits in with an O-ring. Be careful not to screw that up too much. Should just pull out nicely. Now this is with the water pump off. You can see this one was put on with some gasket maker, so that red stuff has to get cleaned up. There's that pipe that comes in with the O-ring. Hopefully mine comes with a replacement O-ring, and I will replace that. If not, make sure that thing's in good shape and or go buy a new one. So that's with it out. This is what my new water pump looks like. Thermostat sits in the end of it there, so make sure you do your thermostat while it's out, because it's easier that way. Here's the old thermostat. And the water pump wasn't quite smoked yet, but it wasn't good either, so. Okay, water pump is in. Those bolts go in at 10 foot-pounds, the short ones. The long one goes in at 17 foot-pounds, this one right here. Make sure that gasket is flat and seated correctly. Thermostat's in. make sure if your thermostat has an air bleed hole on it, it's on the top. If it doesn't, and honestly, regardless of if it does or doesn't, it's a really good idea once you go to put coolant in here to fill this till it starts to overflow first, and then go ahead and fill your radiator and everything else, because this has a coolant bypass loop like every car does. But if your thermostat doesn't have an air bleeder, if you just fill your radiator, it means your engine will be empty of coolant until the thermostat opens, which basically means you might overheat the motor before starting it. No good. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put my power steering pump back up where it's supposed to be, and then the pulleys can go back on and we can put the belts on and kind of wrap this up. All right, it's time to put the balance belt on. This is what I got for a part number. And I have a note about this guy. This is how it's supposed to go, but you'll have trouble getting the belt on with the spring in there, so probably start with that off. But it should sandwich around these 2 points, just like that. Okay, I got the belt on. You want to check your marks again. That one's lined up. That one's lined up. That one's lined up. And these two, this one and that one, can be a little tricky, but if anything, you just need to play with the pulley with the belt a little loose. Remember, this engine turns clockwise, so all tension needs to end up, all the slack needs to end up on this side of the system. So just keep playing with where this is positioned prior to pulling tension until you get it lined up with tension. Okay, and we're on to the main timing belt now. I got my tensioner just loose, no spring, and the belt's just on there. There's no marks on these belts, so whatever. And got it around the bottom. Now the important thing to think about here is that, again, engine spins clockwise. The crankshaft is what's turning everything. So this is pulling through the system. So all my slack needs to end up right over here by the tensioner. If you have slack here and then you pull it through, this is now out of time. Doesn't work. Notice also that we're off our timing mark, and see how this is a bit springy. So I'm going to use a bar to pull this pulley into place. And what I find is really helpful is if you actually pull it ever so slightly past the timing mark as you're putting the belt on it, and then let it come back, it'll take that tension out of the system. Same thing with the camshaft pulley. Now this upper tensioner I found a little tricky to get on, so what I ended up doing was getting the bottom started on this peg here, at which point this right here was leaning against the pulley. Then I got this screwdriver in here and I'm prying against the base, not the pulley. And I pried the top till it was just on there, and then I got the bolt started to get everything in there. Definitely a little bit of a tricky spring to wind. Right, and a quick double check of the timing marks. We got this one, bang, that one, yep, and crankshaft, yes, all the way at the back, at the back, at the back, at the back. Very good. Timing belt is on. Now it's just a matter of reversing steps to how we got here, and we should be all set. Right, so now we got that in. Crank bolt was 130 foot-pounds, and I just did mine with some blue Loctite. I also just put Loctite on everything I really wouldn't want to come loose, like cam sprockets, main bolts, etc. Anyways, now that the belt's on, and we have our pulley back on, so we actually have something to turn the engine with, it's a really good idea to turn the whole thing over at least twice by hand, just to make sure we didn't screw anything up. Even though all the marks are right, everything looks great, la-di-da, it's a really good idea to turn this thing over at least twice by hand, just to make sure there's no pistons meeting valves or any kind of funniness like that. It also helps center the belt before you just go straight to starting it. There's that part number for the belt. Sorry, that is blurry. So we've spun this a few times. It looks like we're good to go. We're not going to brutally ruin the engine when we turn it on, which is great. Always a good step. As we're going back together, this is the time to check your belts. Make sure they look okay. These ones are fine. Honestly, they look like they got replaced recently. And these are the 2 belts you need for the water pump, and the alternator looks like They're a 25, 74, 30 from Napa, these two right here. Okay, so I got all my belts on, I got my new fan clutch on. I did notice that it's a lot easier to put the clutch on and like mount this pulley with these bolts without the fan in the way, because it comes a fair bit further back. So just something to notice. And as far as these belts go, I just made sure they're all pretty tight. Honestly, I feel like these cloth ones, like this power steering belt, work better than these rubber ones, because whenever I start it and it's cold and then it runs the extended glow plugs, these squeak like a mother. So I made them nice and tight, and I feel like maybe they're just more bungee than these like fabric based ones. Hard to say, I really don't know, but I tried to make my double alternator belt situation tighter this time because it's been giving me squeaky problems at cold startups. Okay, and I'm at my first hiccup all day, which generally timing jobs are very procedural and straightforward as long as you get good parts, so you'll rarely have a hitch, but this is not timing related. This is an aftermarket radiator I got, which looks great. But they just gave you these as the mounting holes. There's not even like screws or anything in there, and they didn't provide any hardware with it, of course. So, you know, here's the shroud, and it does line up to those, but then you'd have to bolt all the way through, so I think I'm just gonna screw it in. Oh well. Alright, well, I finally got this radiator actually in here, and it was kind of anything but straightforward. You know, like this bolt hits that, but it still goes eventually. Probably the only thing that actually worked right out of the rip was the bottom mounts are in the right spot, thank goodness. And then I just had to redo these hoses, these are transmission hoses. And the transmission does have its own oil cooler, so I wasn't too worried about that, but I am going to be driving this around the winter, and this also serves to heat the transmission on a cold day, and I wanted that still. So I actually had to get whole new hoses and replace the hoses that were going to here because they were too short. And then also this fitting ends up being really close to the differential, but just barely squeaks by because I cut it short, and now the hose is what's making up that slack. Not ideal, but it's in, and it's definitely a bigger radiator than stock, so hopefully all this thrashing around was worth it. It runs and drives. See, it moved. It works. It still doesn't have enough coolant in it to let it run for a while because I am going to be doing the turbo tomorrow, so I'm excited for that. And for now, it's in there and it runs, and so I guess that's how you do a timing belt. Apologies if I left a few things out. I was kind of moving quickly and just hitting the main points as I went through the job. Hope this helps.